Welcome to TXAPA Live. Glad to have everybody here today. Let's go ahead and do our safety share. If you don't know where our safety shares are, if you go to texasasphalt.org and click right down there under resources, you'll see a link to safety shares, and that will bring you to our safety shares, and we publish them. You feel free to use them for your any type of meeting that you've got. So our safety share today is COVID-19 update. In the past 2 weeks, Texas has led the country with the highest number of COVID cases at over 77,000, which is over 8% of the national total. On October 23rd, the daily high count in the U.S. reached a new record high, suggesting this wave is going to be worse than the one earlier this summer. According to Johns Hopkins University, the number of fatality cases has continued to stay flat, which is good news. But as the cases increase, so does the percentage. So we need to be careful there. Experts are concerned that these numbers again may rise as winter approaches. The Texas Department of State of Health Services and the CDC say the best way to prevent illness is to avoid being exposed to the virus and recommend the following as best practices to protect yourself. Cover your mouth and nose with a mask when others are around. Avoid close contact. Stay 6 feet away. Wash hands often, especially after coughs and sneezes. Clean and disinfect, frequently touch surfaces daily, and monitor your health. Take your temperature daily, and we all know what the symptoms are. So let's be safe out there. Let's be careful. All right, so we are about ready to kick this thing off. I'm going to turn it over to Corey, and Corey is going to lead the discussion today. And so, Corey, welcome. Glad to have you here, and let's go ahead and get started.
Jim, thanks for getting everything going there and having everything. Where's Harold? He's usually sitting in here with me, so I'm a little confused in how to run this on my own.
Yeah,
so
Harold's doing.
I'm a little nervous there for that.
Harold's doing a little recon today.
Recon, getting ready for the annual meeting or the membership meeting, correct?
Yes, sir.
I'm glad everyone can join us for the TXAPA Live today. Today we're going to be talking about QCQA, a roadmap to success, and in particular, when we kind of discuss this, we'll be at the plant. We have some guests with us today. It's a panel discussion, and really what you're going to be hearing today is a conversation. We have some questions that we're going to be going over, and some of them they've heard, some they haven't, so it'll be interesting to see their responses. But we're just going to kind of let them introduce themselves right now. So if you want to go ahead and get started, guys.
I'm Brett Haggerty. I'm the general manager for PaveTex in San Antonio.
I'm Jose Mata. I'm with CSA Reece in San Angelo, Texas, QC manager.
Spracklen. I'm vice president of business development, beyond engineering and testing.
Thank you guys for introducing yourselves. The first question we're going to kind of get out there is, Jim was just talking about the COVID-19 update. What are some things that y'all had to do from your technician side of things to prepare for, or maybe some, not challenges, but something that came out of this, a positive from this COVID stuff from the lab's perspective?
So Corey, like us, we have all our doors locked to the lab. And of course, every door has a sign that to be going through the main entrance, the front door. And once you go in there, we got to check your temperature and, of course, be wearing a mask when you go into the lab. And if for some odd reason there's no business of you being there, we recommend not to go in there just for our own safety and your safety.
Yeah, it's been that's one of the things we've done too, Jose, is lock the door, and Jim can't get into our building over there anymore. So that's a good thing.
That's a good thing.
No, I got a key.
Somehow he got a key.
I have a key.
So,
hey, and just a reminder to everybody that's watching today or that's tuned in, if you want to weigh in, please weigh in at any time. You can tell us what you're doing for COVID as well. We'll be glad to share it. Go ahead.
Yeah.
Back to you, Corey.
Yeah, make sure you use that chat box, ask the questions, and Jim will make sure we get to hear those questions. How about Bruce or Brett? Anything from you guys?
You know, when COVID first started off, there was a lot of fear that I think went around for a lot of our folks. Everybody had at least some type of family member or close friend that got infected with it. So we were working our darn level best to try and make sure that everybody felt protected and that they weren't getting overly exposed as much as possible. So we actually started, in addition to what Jose was talking about, we actually put in disinfectant protocols every day, multiple times a day. We're disinfecting everything in the lab, in the office, and outfitting our guys with disinfecting equipment to even do their trucks and their vehicles. So if anything creeps in that is keeping their exposure as low as possible. So at least from that perspective, I think that it has helped us out, putting an even more heightened sense on safety and everybody's security.
Yeah, similar to Brett. I mean, and Jose, we're taking precautions. I mean, it's been a challenge, definitely, especially when you have technicians that are traveling to multiple districts or areas. You got to make sure that you're not only keeping them safe, but keeping the client and all stakeholders on the project safe. And so, making sure that we're talking to them daily about the facial coverings and, sanitizing their hands, social distancing. It's probably one of the biggest challenges. We come from an industry that is family oriented, lots of friends, lots of relationships. So you want to go up and shake a person's hand. Things that we've talked to them about is understanding these people may have people at home that are high risk. And we want to make sure that we do our part to keep everybody safe and healthy.
Yeah, we got to think about the other person, not just ourselves, huh?
Yep, that's a good point.
So as we get moving into the QCQA part, a roadmap to success at a plant, to me, one of the most significant things in that, you have your equipment, you have your plant and those different things, but it's the technician. The technician, if they don't know what they're doing, that could cause some serious issues. And so the first question I'm going to kind of pose to you guys is, what would be a good process, or do you have a good process to make sure that the technicians that you have are successful on the job?
I think the main thing, Corey, is like I have 6 technicians, and every time we start a job, I try to be there with them when we start the job, and I try to take them, whoever's going to be on that job, take them to the pre-pave meeting. That way they can know what the job's going to consist of, who's going to be the testing people, what TXAPA requires from us. And I think that's the most important thing.
I'd never thought about taking a new technician like to the pre-pave meeting and stuff like that. That's a really good practice so they can see the bigger picture of things.
In addition to the training that we really focus a lot on over PaveTex, communication is critical. Just making sure that the individual technicians know where they're going. Who's the point of contact when they get to the job? Who's the inspector? Who's the client? Do they have all the right locations where they need to be, the right times? Do they have the right templates that the client's going to want to get their reports in? As well as for outfitting our technicians with checklists. That way they make sure that they're covering everything that's needed for the job and nothing gets missed.
Yeah, I really want to piggyback on what Brett's saying. That checklist is really important. And so, it's you got to look at the job, just like what Jose was saying. You need to know what's the mix, what's the spec, and what are the risks associated with that job. And the communication standard that Brett was talking about is huge. So, from Brett's side and my side, if we're servicing TxDOT, the owner, then we want to make sure our technicians first understand item 4, the partnering aspect. Leave the emotion at home. This is not about us against them. This is about getting a job done at the highest quality possible. And then, sharing that checklist, I think we're going to have a question probably be more appropriate to respond the rest of this to later.
Yeah, that's, this all kind of started, and even bringing this up and bringing us guys together is to start a conversation, right? What are some tools that we can come together as an industry and put out there? So, I've heard checklists, different things like that. And so, if y'all have ideas, and not just you 3 guys, but out there, and you have a checklist that you send out with your technicians, please send it in, because those are tools that at the HMAC, we want to make available to more people, so that when people arrive at the job, they are prepared and know those type of things. Because it is intimidating to kind of go to a plant for the first time. You don't know anyone, and those type of things. So, Brett, I think in all of y'all, that's great that y'all are doing that. So, Jim, I think you had a question.
Yeah, I just had a question for the group. And we were talking about this the other day. Do you guys use like group text for project level stuff so you can share information back and forth quickly?
We actually do. We have a group text message, and normally we try to include the text dot or the CNI technician that's out there. Sometimes it's hard to include them because sometimes they send different technicians, but we share information as soon as we get our results. Even if we get the rice first or the AC content, we share that through text message, and at least we could see where we're at, and also for the 1Bs out there on the road.
Well, how do y'all? That's one thing I've always wanted. Like between the plant and the road, how do you connect the guy that's at the plant to the road? How are you connecting them together so that they know who's doing what on the job?
And I think text message is real good, Corey, because everybody could see that, and you can add up to 15 people, if I'm not mistaken, on that group text message.
Okay. Bruce,
Yeah, Corey, I agree with that approach. I mean, it's a really good one. The other thing is, what we were talking about earlier, that keeps everything above water, to where it's visible to everybody. It's a true partnering thing. That way, the inspector. So one of the examples that I'd like to share, especially as we're entering into like the super pave S curve, you can get. There's sometimes you can get too coarse of a sample and it's going to show a low density and it's not representative of what that mix is. And so some of the ideas that we've started looking at is, okay, so is that the producer's fault? In line with item 4, what would be appropriate there? Because you call the field and say, hey, look, we just got basically a remove and replace density. What's it looking like out there? Oh, we're getting 94, 95. And so to me, that indicates a sampling issue or a sample that's bad. Doesn't make the person bad that sampled it. It happens. And especially as we're embarking on something new like this, it's going to take a while for everybody to understand how much of a sample they need to get, to where we're getting enough sample for at the end of the, if they get their burn and their rice first, is there enough material for 2 molds or is that the rock that's, folded over as they were getting the others? Getting a sample out of a pan or splitting it down is no different than a loader in a stockpile. You can segregate it. And so these are things that have to be communicated. And then at that point, you have a partnering approach, QC, QA involved, along with the inspector and QC in the field. Everybody's taking that approach to where that communication standard can be pushed upward to the construction, superintendent and the chief inspector and the engineer, to where everybody's partnering here and said, you know what, you're right. We're not seeing this out here. Let's grab another sample real quick so that the engineer has all the information they can get to make sure that they're able to decide to accept it or reject it accordingly.
Yeah, I think that's a good point, Bruce, about, looking at all the data when you get a test result. I mean, you look at the whole thing. We've just finished a whole troubleshooting series on mix and plant and paving, and you got to look at everything. And you can't have enough sample. And for people, if they're starting to scrape up from the bottom of the pan to get enough to make it, I'm not sure I would go any further without going in and restarting and go getting a new sample. So yeah, my opinion.
Yeah, Brett, we noticed you dropped off, Brett. And so that question that we were just kind of discussing was, what is the most embarrassing thing that has ever happened to you?
Oh, here we go.
So let's bring it up, Brett.
There we go.
Remember, I
It sounded like it was a hard question, so I dropped on purpose.
Okay, so we'll keep moving on. With so many changes, it's like specifications and test procedures have been changing, I think, more this past year than at any other time. And it's probably extremely impossible for someone to kind of keep track of that. How do y'all keep your technicians informed of all these specification and test procedure changes?
Hey, Corey, I'd like to start off on that. So I think it goes back to the checklist like Brett was talking about earlier. But this is what I was going to expound on earlier. So this needs to go beyond the technician. So just think of this. So you go from you got a job that's a 344 job and then a 3077 job going out of the same plant, both essentially the same design, and they're 6422 oils. And you got a plant operator that's got 20 years experience. Does he know that the production temperature has changed? You know, because historically, plant operators in this industry have always, the hotter the better. You know, that's what paving crews have always, that's just bred into them. And so how do we combat that? You know, to where we help safeguard the producers and the plant operators from making the mistake of shipping 300, 400 tons that's above temperature that gets rejected. And so one of my ideas that I've been thinking about, and I wanted to share it with the group and see what your thoughts are. So just like we do a safety tailgate, what if we had a uniform checklist, Corey, similar to what you were discussing, that we had for industry, to where they go into the plant. And so similar to a safety tailgate meeting, we have a quality meeting at the plant and in the road each day where they're checking it off, say, hey, look, these are the temps. Just remember, you know, this job over here requires 325, not 350. So it might be in your best interest to produce all day long under the 325 for both jobs. Now, these are just some ideas that I've had, but I think it would help. Another thing is, you know, the current 2014 test template does not flag the VMA out on or the density out on the regular sublot sheets. And so you have to go all the way to the summary page. The challenge with that is on the gradation page, it flags the gradation out. So human nature takes over, and if they don't see a flag hit on that gradation, you have to get it ingrained into the technicians, into their just habit that they go to that summary page each day. So one of the things I like to do is add on that checklist of what is their minimum VMA. And that was a hard lesson learned that I experienced with a previous firm in Fort Worth, where we had, and it was a blessing because they had input the wrong oil specific gravity into the template. But there was 4 in a row VMAs where the contractor should have been shut down. And so we got to figure out some ways that we can catch that early and to protect and mitigate all the risks to our industry and to all stakeholders on the project.
Hey, Jose, how as a contractor, how do y'all actually let your plant operators know, you know, different temperature changes and those type of things?
So I'm like Bruce. So now we're down to a checklist, Corey. Right now, we have a lot of new plant operators that are from out of state. So right now, each one of them is taking at least 3 to 4 days to come to the lab, if not with Craig Odom, and talk about all the changes, you know, that are occurring. Because a lot of these plant operators, like Bruce was saying, they just know, hey, how come we're not doing it 330, 64, and you gotta, then that's when you explain to them why is the reason, you know, different asphalts, different mixes, different items on the mixes. So it's been challenging, but we've actually have found the time, and not only us, Corey, I mean, your TXAPA is kind of our savior, because all them videos that you all been posting, that has helped a lot. So in spare times, we actually, every change that you all send us, we forward it to our technicians and plant operators so they can read, and you'll be surprised how many questions they ask us about all these changes as why they're changing it, you know. So I think that's the main thing, you know. As soon as we get a change, we try to get it to them and explain to them why.
Thanks.
Communication.
So on our, just to follow up with Bruce and Jose, we're fortunate enough to be able to try and get the notification from TXAPA as well as from the districts that we work with whenever there's a change in the spec or the test procedure. So to try and complement our monthly safety meetings, we're always going over any of those modifications with our technicians whenever we see something. The templates are great at trying to capture things, but there are some things that the templates may not necessarily capture. Like, for instance, when there was a change in calculating the densities and how long you leave that puck in the water. So we do follow up with them. We try to get out into the field as much as we can just to make sure that they are following procedure. And at the same time, when we are getting reports, we review those before, in addition to when they're getting sent to TxDOT, to make sure that this isn't something that gets overlooked. That way we're enforcing those changes with our technicians at the same time.
Pop quiz real quick, and we'll do this for the everyone out there watching. What is the change in the water temperature? What's actually, how long do you leave it in the water bath now for a GA? Jim knows the answer. He just gave me the answer, but he's not going to win. So if you know the answer out there, make sure you put it in there, and Jim will let you know if you're right or wrong.
Put it in the chat box.
Put it in the chat box.
Yeah, put it in the question box.
Another thing.
Who's going to be first?
Did we get something?
Not yet.
Jose kind of brought up the specifications and education stuff. Jim and Chuck.
We have a winner.
Oh, who is it?
Roberto Yanes.
Oh, nice.
Good job, Roberto.
Roberto, if you can email or let Jim know your address, we'll send you an HMAC hat. How about that for being there and getting that? But Jim and Chuck have put on for contractors, a specification education program. So if your company, if you're a contractor, haven't participated in that, you want to make sure to participate in that. I think you guys over at CSA participated, right, Jose?
Yes, and actually, Corey, I'm in the process of hiring an assistant for me because we need to stay up to date on all this the specs that are coming up and all that, and help me train my technicians and plant operators, and and just to be on top of everything, because I mean it's surprising how things can get out of hand quickly, because if you don't know that this is a new change, this is a 3077 spec versus a 344. So
yeah. Well, I'm just Jim, I'm gonna say this on record. If Jose hires someone because they watched TXAPA Live today, I think we should get some type of kickback. That's all I'm gonna say.
I'm thinking
Dinner or something for us, Jose. If you just get someone because of what you just did. So
yeah, I'm thinking
that needs to be a question on your application. How did you hear about this job?
get the little referral going.
We hear stories also about especially from a CE&I perspective. So y'all might be able to speak to this, Brett and Bruce. But we hear like, hey, I had this guy that was on a concrete job. I know that's a bad word in our industry, but on a concrete job for 4 months, and then he's sent to an asphalt plant to do some testing. How do we make sure that person's set up for success? Because what we hear when they come sometimes is, I haven't done this in 4 months, or I haven't done this in 6 months. And, so how do we set those people up for success? That we understand that there's, y'all have all kinds of work out there, from dirt to concrete to, all kinds of things, bridge inspection. But how do we set the guy coming up to the plant for success?
Man, there's a lot to be said for trying to keep consistency of technician where they're at. I used to be of the opinion that I want to try and make every technician a super tech who's certified in everything. And I still do. I really do. It helps to bolster their resume, makes it more beneficial to the company. But at the same time, there are different issues that you can run into depending on which plant you're at. Where's the location of the oven? Where's the equipment located? So trying to get the individual familiar with the specifics of those jobs is important. So what we try to do on our side is that we have that open communication with the technician before they go out, to make sure that they're feeling comfortable with what the expectations of the job are. So, for example, it's kind of in reverse to what you're asking there, Corey. We actually had a guy who was doing 1A solid for 6 months, and then the plant was starting to wind down, and we had 102 work coming up. So we had to go out and do densities. And the tech came up to us, he's like, it's been a while since I operated this gauge. I haven't done OJT for more than a minute. I'm not sure I'm ready. which is exactly what we needed to hear. We try to sit down with them at least the day before, if not more so, to make sure that they're comfortable before they're going out to the job. It really takes the responsibility of that manager, that supervisor, to make sure that they're feeling comfortable before they go out.
Well, it's also good that they said that they're not comfortable with it, and they need to be have that comfort within your organization to say, I know I was trained in this, but it has been a while. Would you mind doing me a refresher? And I think that means a lot when your folks can come to you like that. So congratulations.
Yeah, and I would say, since we're talking about CES, that's why there's a task lead too. For support. That's what a task lead's supposed to be. I'm not a huge fan of, what I just heard. I mean, as far as in a concrete technician been out, 5 months. But, like Brett said, there's some techs out there that are super techs that they know concrete like the back of their hand. They know asphalt like the back of their hand. And so it really comes down to, just like Brett said, being a responsible player, being a responsible stakeholder. I wouldn't want to send that guy that's been out on a concrete job for 5 months that might be a little uncomfortable and send him out to an SMA job. It's just something I wouldn't want to do, and something we'd have to figure out.
Okay. We got a question that came in, so Jim, if you don't mind.
Yeah, can the panel address technicians moving from text job projects to city or county projects who also use TxDOT specifications? Many times there is an issue of older specs versus brand new specs and how they are used. Thank you, Frank.
I didn't quite understand the question. Could you repeat it again?
I didn't hear it.
Yeah, one more time. Can the panel address technicians moving from TxDOT projects to city or county projects who also use maybe a different version of the TxDOT specifications? Many times there is an issue of older specs versus newer specs from different jobs and how they're used. How do your people handle that issue of, it may be a dense graded spec, but it may be an older version versus a newer version. How do you handle that?
And we've had that challenge before in our area because the counties around here are still stuck on the 1993 spec. And we've had to actually sit down with them and explain to them the new changes and as why. Because those mixes, we really don't produce them no more, and it's hard. I mean, it's been because they just come and tell us, well, I want that mix that was placed 6-7 years ago. And I mean, and you got to sit down and explain to them what are the consequences if we give them that mix, because everything has changed nowadays.
Yeah, I would say also you got to understand that it's the we want to do just like what Jose was saying. So City of Dallas is a good partner to TXAPA. We've actually had some training sessions with them because they're a city that had, actually a mixture, some TxDOT, they specified TxDOT design and then, the roadway cores would be done totally different. And then some of the other standards they would modify or have a COG/TxDOT hybrid. There's cities that have that contradict one another. But at the end of the day, the owner, you got to figure out how the owner interprets that spec, because that's, at the end of the day, they're the ones that accept it or not. And if there's challenges there, then I highly recommend to reach out to Corey, to especially Chuck Fuller, Larry Welch. Larry's been doing a lot of work going around the state and, working with these cities and kind of getting them up to speed.
Yeah, just to compliment that. So I used to have this old air engineer. I got, used to work with really well. He had this old adage. He said, plans are worthless, but planning is everything. So, I took it to heart, man. We do it with everything. Preparation on what the guys are going to be doing out in the field is critical. I think the checklist that Bruce and Jose are talking about, the ones that we maintain, not just specific at what needs to be done by the job or by the mix, it's by the client as well. I mean, even in TxDOT, different districts want to have things done in a different way. So we need to make sure that we're capturing that and that our technicians are prepared for it. So we find checklists depending on what the client needs, what those specifications are, and different templates that are already predefined for what those thresholds are supposed to be.
Yeah, I think that the writer was writing back. He was comparing a city and a county, and basically they both need to get their specs updated. So I think that's just it's a continuum everywhere that we just need to keep working on. So if you're aware of areas that are using a pretty old spec or are conflicting with what's good new, let us know and we'll see what we can work on.
We were talking about SuperTex here just a second ago as well. And when I think of SuperTex, I think of Tech of the Year. And Jose, you were one of those Techs of the Year, right? So you get the SuperTech.
Da, 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 da.
Yeah, there we go. We got the music too. So,
Yeah.
But being on the contracting side of things, and Brett kind of answered to this too after he does. But how do you handle when a technician shows up and let's just say they don't remember all their stuff?
I think this is where partnering comes in, Corey. To me, partnering is real important because we have a real close relationship with TxDOT or CNI. And we've had issues where a technician comes to the job site and he doesn't even check in with us, doesn't even give us random numbers. And I'm like, we got to go look for him. And I go and present myself, I tell him who I am and all that. And he's just like, I don't even know if I'm at the right place. That's when you actually know he's nervous, he's new and all that. So that's when partnering comes in. You call TxDOT or the CNI contractor and tell them, hey, I got so-and-so here. He showed up. He's kind of nervous. I mean, you can actually tell when someone is new and doesn't know what he's doing. And, we try to always help them. And that's when we tell district, look, if there's something wrong, this is where we need to check, not just say, this is referee, this is what I got. And, we got to check to see that everything has a trend. And I think partnering is the biggest thing right there.
Yeah. When you were talking about new to the job and those type of things, Jim's laughing and pointing at me, and I think it's because of what I'm doing over here right now.
Yeah, that's
and I'm
it.
new to
That's
this
it.
and not knowing where to look and all those kind of things. So
and Harold is not his
and he's not
lifeline
here
today.
to say, look at the camera. But how Bruce, Brett, how would y'all respond to how would you want that situation to play out for you guys?
I think Jose nailed the head on the partnering side. On our side, if that happens, I mean, I don't want to discount someone going directly to TxDOT. I think that's what you should do. I would prefer to get the phone call ourselves because for me, that's our reputation, that's our individual, and if we didn't have him set up, that could be reflective of what we're doing.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not saying it's never happened. I've had a guy who he was concerned about doing 1B inspection. He'd been certified. He'd shadowed a guy for 2 weeks, and he was getting cut loose to go out and do it on his own. I went out there, and he was physically shaking. He was freaking out being out there for the first time on his own. But being able to have that partnering spirit, being able to try and get others involved, try and get that supervisor involved, that's really what I would be looking at. Let us try and help assist that guy along, try and make sure it's not impacting the job, not impacting the quality of the project. Yeah. We can get it corrected.
The two things I think from this question that I'm walking away with that I heard is partnering and communication. Those are two valuable things in this situation. So
Yeah, Corey, I'm going to add on a little bit too, because this is a discussion we best have and really get together on by November 2021, right? Because when it goes to all districts complying with those two technicians being in separate labs,
Oh, yeah.
you're going to need, we need to know. And like, like Brett said, I want the phone call. I'd like the phone call, but I understand if you call TxDOT, because that's a lot of risk to be taken on as a contractor. But I'll say this, over the years, being on the contractor side and the consultant side, I've had technicians show up to a plant where the contractor QC didn't know what they were doing. And so it goes both ways. And it's something that it needs to be, we got to take the emotion out of it. Too many times I hear where technicians don't get along or they're not, they're not agreeing with the results. Well, that's why we have a referee system. And that's why I tell my guys is like, a couple of things that I'm a huge believer in is let's look at the test results. Do they make sense? If they don't make sense, do we have enough sample left over? Because we should, based on our training, just so that we can verify. If we verify and it is different, do we have enough for a third one so that we can confirm which one's right? Those are just some of the ideas that we have. Corey, you know that I started a program, I think, about 5 years ago at my previous company, which we're bringing over into this, where we have closed book tests. And that's only for the actual testing, so that the technicians have to be confident in that before they go to a plant by themselves. And what we consider confident is 70% or better on a closed book examination. And you saw the exam. So to me, that's a good way to know and get people there.
Gotcha. So Bruce, what I'm hearing is you want a closed book test for everybody. No, I'm just joking.
I actually do. Yeah.
Moving on, one of the things too is, being in Central Texas, a lot of times you're working at a plant, you might be, what, San Antonio district wants compared to what the Austin district wants, compared to what Yoakum wants, compared to, all these bordering districts. How do your technicians keep that in line on making sure that, we hear they report different, we hear different things like that. So, what are some thoughts there?
I think on my case, it's much easier because we got more of a permanent plan. So I try to keep that technician there all the time, and he knows how to text out that district once they're testing and their forms, and how often we do pay sheets. So I think that's on my end. I think that's easier than for Bruce and Brett, because they deal with more technicians. So
I think those happen at the pre-pave. I mean, all those types of discussions need to be hashed out before, and again, marching orders that clearly spell it out for the technician before a ton hits the ground.
Yeah, way before. And the checklist that I keep talking about, that it's not just material specific, it's client specific, and it's specific to districts as well. I mean, just for an example, the daily binder sampling. So we're sampling it every day, but different districts have different requirements on where they want them stored, where they want them delivered, how they want them labeled. No, not how they want them, where they want them delivered. And now the QCQA templates also, there's different elements that the districts want recorded in different ways. So our checklists are outlined specific for the district and for the client that they're going to. That way they're aware of it. Okay, I'm going to be in Austin today, or I'll be in San Antonio tomorrow. But they understand what the client wants, because we want to make sure that it's consistent.
Yeah. Well, speaking of consistency, one of the things that the center wants to do is we want to create some different forms that are tools for the technicians to use out there. And if you go to our website, we don't have to right now, Jim, don't worry about it, but under the tools, there's HMAC forms, and you can go there and get a, right now we have 2 different forms there, but you can download those and have your technicians use. But I think everyone kind of getting and doing the same kind of thing and creating a consistency there for the techs would be an important thing. But I'd let you guys talk about that, but we're running a little shorter on time. So we're going to end with one question. And if we could do one thing as an industry that would set up our technicians for success when it comes to being at the plant, what would it be?
I think communication with the technician is the best thing. There can be, Corey, communication between contractor, TXAPA, and CNI. I think that's gonna make everybody successful.
Man, that's a loaded question, Corey.
I know.
What is one thing we can do as
I'm just saying, just pick one. I know there's a bunch, but pick one, Brett. Just one.
Oh man. Okay, so this doesn't happen all the time, but it's few and far between when it happens. But there have been times. The ones that bother me the most is when I see the technicians are just totally demoralized on a project that they're going to. And when I look into it more, typically it's because there is either frustration about how the project's going, or maybe they're having constant failing test results. So it's almost like there are situations when there is lack of buy-in on the quality process, where, and I've seen it in different forms, and I know we talked about it earlier, sometimes there's headbutting that goes on between line operator and the quality control manager, or between the laydown foreman and the 1B guy trying to set up rolling pattern. And it's when we don't have that buy-in, where we're trying to have that good discussion to make the project better, that it impacts quality of the job, it impacts the pay, and it damn sure impacts the ability of that technician being able to be set up for success. They feel like they're failing. They don't know what they're trying to do, what they were trained to do, but they're not getting the response back from them. So
Yeah, I agree. I think I go back to the quality tailgate, the quality meetings daily. I think if we did that daily, we would get a little bit, we might be able to develop that culture industry wide to navigate through some of those waters that Brett's talking about, for that plant operators there, even have their supervisors there, at the beginning of the job, have a site meeting, like pre-pave typically has a lot of the decision makers in it, and very few of the times where you see a plant. I don't know if I've ever seen a plant operator at it, but I will tell you this, there's an item in the spec that talks about the quality commitment from the contractor. And I think, from the consultant side, everyone should have to sign one of those before the job, so that they understand they're putting their signature on it. And I'll tell you, there's been a lot of tons put down over the years, and it's been a long time since I've seen from the foreman up sign a quality commitment for a paving project. Jose, do y'all do that?
Well, we don't do it all the time, but there's some particular jobs that we gotta get done in certain time, and we all go in it, because there's been weekends that we work, and we get together and talk about it, because it's gonna be stressful, like you said, Brett. We're gonna be out there for 12 days straight or 15 days straight, and everybody gets frustrated. And by doing that commitment, we're all in this together, not only you.
Mm-hmm.
I would actually add to, Corey, education, situational training, such as, to where that emotion, like what Brett's saying, where they feel like they're failing, to talk to them about, hey, look, this is the chain that it goes up. And so don't worry about it. Don't stress yourself out, and do everything you can. So let's say a situation comes up where the QC believes that they're good. The QA believes that it should be basically a stop in production. Having the culture there to understand that the producer The contractor has a business decision to make. And if they make that decision to continue forward, then there's an item in the spec that says unauthorized work. Jose, how would you feel if the difference between somebody saying, no, you got to stop versus, hey, look, our understanding is this is unauthorized work. We're going to document it here, but hey, look, we're going to do everything we can as far as documentation, additional testing, so that that engineer of record has the information that they can make a decision that hopefully proves out the quality of your mix. I mean, that would probably be much more receptive from you guys, right?
Exactly. You're absolutely right on that.
Thank you, guys. This is just the beginning. This is a continued conversation. And just to let everyone know, on November, we will not have a TXAPA Live on November 5th, but on November 12th, we will be doing part 2 of this, which is QCQA, a roadmap to success on the road. And so Brett, Bruce, and Jose will be joining us again, and we'll have another set of questions that we'll be discussing. And, at the center, one of the things that we've really kind of going back to answer that question that I asked them at the end is we've started a program, our staff, Jim helped write, myself, and we believe it's called What You Do Matters. And basically what we really wanted to do at the center is put that focus on, hey, every test matters. Everything that you do on that job matters. And we wrote what would you say, Jim? Probably about a 10, 15 slide presentation that kind of goes over that.
Yeah.
And so we're wanting to elevate that this next year. And really that comes down to, like, if I were to answer that question, we want everyone to be trained and know what they're doing on their job, and doing it the right way, not taking shortcuts, but doing it the right way. And that'd be my answer for that question. But again, this is just part 1 of a 2-part series. So we hope you join us again on November 12th. And we thank you for joining us today. Everybody stay warm.